What's queued up, Broncos fans? Literally talking about Q Robinson today on the Broncos Breakdown by Chat Sports. My name is Moose, and I feel like this is a video that I wanted to make because Q is really one of the only Broncos draft picks that we haven't really talked about, considering the type of position that he plays, which is special teams. So it can get lost in translation just how valuable a player like Q can be. Now, before we get into the breakdown of Mr. Q Robinson, if you are ready for Broncos training camp, type me. We're going to be covering Broncos training camp for the next week, 2 weeks, however long it lasts. We're going to make sure that you have a video every single day covering not only your favorite team, but your favorite players and making updates to see how players are progressing. Now let's talk about the Broncos' fourth-round draft pick. It's a fourth-round pick out of Alabama. Alabama! Standout special teams player for the Crimson Tide, believe it or not. And obviously needs a little bit of time to develop those defensive skills. He is technically listed as an edge player, but we can almost guarantee that at least year one, Q is going to be a special teams player, which there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, you'll hear in just a little bit how much he actually enjoys playing special teams. But he was recently interviewed by Mike Kliss, and he told Kliss that he not only loves special teams, but that he also made the most of his time on the playing field when he got it at Alabama. And one of the things that Q mentions when you play Alabama football is there are so many talented players that you might not see the field nearly as much as you think, but they do an excellent job preparing you to make sure that when you are on the field, you have the most to make of your opportunity given the talent around you, which he absolutely did in 2024. He only started 5 games and yet came up with 4 sacks, 7 tackles for loss, 23 tackles, had a PFF grade of 86, all while playing special teams as well. So a player that, like I said, when he was on the field, made the most of what he had with his opportunities. And I do believe that in due time, he can develop into a hybrid linebacker, a guy that could play a 3-4 style back. He'll never really be an on-ball linebacker. He's going to be more of a off-ball linebacker, given his pros and cons and the type of player that he has shown to be so far. Because his body type is kind of like a tweener. He doesn't really have that stereotypical edge body that you're looking for, but his pros are definitely in the speed category. So he's got plenty of speed to play at least in the NFL. That's where the majority of his athleticism comes in. He's made the most of his opportunities in his senior season with the Crimson Tide, and a very nice, quick change of direction to his game, no matter where he's on the field, whether that be special teams or on defense. Now, again, with every pro comes a con, and that lack of skill set as a backer and edge was clearly on display, or not on display, to be more specific. His body type doesn't really fit that stereotypical edge. He's not big enough or strong enough really to kind of fit that mold. And he did play less than 400 run/pass snaps despite being a 4-year player at Alabama. Here's the good news. With how good the Broncos defense is, Q's going to have a multitude of opportunities to learn behind a multiple amount of players. We can all agree on that. I mean, the Broncos' front 5 is as fearsome as it gets, as technically sound as it gets, as aggressive as it gets. And in Vance Joseph's style of defense, you are going to be learning from the very best. So in a sense, you are going to be kind of thrown into the fire. But that's not to say you're going to get burned, because you're going to adapt to the way that these guys play. And if for any reason a player goes down, gets traded away, is no longer on the team, gets released, after their contract is up, well, then maybe Q Robinson can find his way into a rotational spot with the Denver Broncos. Now, that's the front 5. The linebackers, I do believe he can end up becoming, sitting behind a Dondre Tillman. Obviously, he's going to sit behind Jonathan Cooper, right, and Nick Bonito. But again, working his way onto the defense where even in year one, maybe he can appear in a couple of games on the defensive side of the ball is not something that is out of the question. Now, Mike Kliss said this about Q, the prospect. Robinson is a 6'4", 243-pound player with pass rushing prospects who was all that coming out of Birmingham, Alabama, which is where he's from. As it turns out, he was solid, but not a star for the Crimson Tide. But the way he handled that adversity and his standout play on special teams were reasons the Broncos selected Robinson in the 4th round. So I noticed one thing from the 2025 draft, and I'm sure you did as well. The Broncos seem to have valued players with high upside but needed work. Savion Jones, Q Robinson, Caleb Lohner. Do you see the trend? I certainly did. Now, year one, what does it mean? Because obviously Broncos fans are, and the Broncos themselves are focused on this year, 2025. What is Q's role going to be in 2025? Well, he's going to be a containment player on special teams. I don't really see him being a gunner, but a player that can make tackles on punt returns, on kick returns, and can, maybe make a play here or there after, an initial player gets beat and, a punt returner is heading his way down the field. Maybe he's about 10 yards. Q Robinson comes in, lowers the boom, and makes a stop right then and there. And Q loves special teams. In fact, he's carved out a very nice career for himself. He got drafted because of special teams. He said, I love it. I feel like it's my bread and butter. Take the thinking away. Actually, I have to do a lot more thinking now that I'm at an elevated level in the NFL. But for the most part, it's still gritty. You've just got to be able to go out there, move your feet, and make a play, which is exactly what special teams is all about. It's reactionary. Now, there is some, technique involved, and under Darren Rizzi, I'm sure that the Broncos have their own new way of doing things on special teams. But for the most part, special teams remains, in and of itself, a reactionary type of play. Ball's kicked away, you run down, you make the tackle. Simple stuff. I want to show Q some love because we haven't really given him a lot on this channel. So type those 51s in the comment. That's obviously his number. I want to see as many 51s as possible. I do think he's going to be a very, very talented special teams player for the Broncos, even in his rookie season. Let's go on to the second part of today's episode. And I'm going to take a little trip down memory lane, but not in a good way for Broncos fans. There were 2 Broncos coaches who made the WOTE list. You know what the WOTE list is? The worst of all time. And 2 of them actually came within the top 5, and we're going to talk about those 2. I think you can already guess at least one of them coming up here in just a second. But my friends, even though the deal is technically over and it's no longer 25% off, this Broncos long sleeve customizable t-shirt is still very, very much in play for you. It's super sweet. That fabric is awesome. It's stretchy. It conforms to your body, making you look a little bit thinner, but it's still breathable. And like I said, completely customizable. So whatever your number, your favorite player's number, doesn't matter. If you want to customize your long sleeve shirt for the 2025 season, because the weather is going to start getting colder, believe it or not, it can't be summer forever, use this link that I've put in the comments and description of today's video. Go to chatsports.com/longsleeve. There you'll find an array of different items for the Broncos coming up for the 2025 season. Again, this is in the comments and description of today's video. Who are the coaches that I'm referring to? Now, they're no longer head coaches in the NFL, but at one time, they were. Nathaniel Hackett and Josh McDaniels, going back even further. We're going back 10-plus years now for Josh McDaniels, but Nathaniel Hackett was the most recent. So CBS came out with an article listing the top 25 worst head coaching hires of all time, and they didn't have the greatest of things to say about Nathaniel Hackett. Here's what they specifically had to say in the middle of their article. What followed was a disaster, talking about right after the hiring of Nathaniel Hackett. The offense ranked dead last in the league. Hackett looked overwhelmed from the start, and there were no signs of improvement, from fans counting down the play clock to avoid delay of game penalties to indecisiveness on key 4th downs. The operation lacked basic structure. Denver finished with a league-worst 15.5 points per game, the lowest in franchise history since 1966. Hackett was fired the day after a 51-14 Christmas Day beatdown against the Rams. He now holds the distinction of being the shortest tenured head coach in Broncos history since the AFL-NFL merger. So I do want to start off by saying this isn't to make fun of anybody. It's not a Nathaniel Hackett slam piece. When news like this comes out and you see that 2 Broncos head coaches were listed on it, it is kind of your duty as a YouTube host to at least talk about it. I don't want to sit here and laugh at Nathaniel Hackett, and I don't want to remind Broncos fans just how bad it was. Obviously, it sucked. Obviously, Hackett was no good. We've clearly moved on. I do want to say, however, in a brief moment of levity, the clock management was the worst of all. I can specifically remember watching games when Nathaniel Hackett was on the field, thinking, what on earth are you doing? I mean, Bears fans know this as well. Matt Eberflus was notoriously bad at this as well. There's been a multitude of head coaches recently that had no idea how to manage the clock. So Nathaniel Hackett, as much as I do wish him the best going forward in his life, I'm very happy he's no longer... Excuse me. I tried holding that in as far as and as long as I could. I'm happy he's no longer the head coach of the Broncos. Whew! It must be those allergies. It's terrible. All right, let's talk about Josh McDaniels now. My apologies on that. Josh McDaniels, actually, one of those coaches that it wasn't a good tenure in Denver, but it wasn't nearly as bad as Nathaniel Hackett. In fact, there were some good things that Josh McDaniels did. Like, do you remember that he started off 6-0 in his first 6 games as the head coach for the Broncos? How about the drafting of Broncos legend Demaryius Thomas? There are 2 things that were really good right off the bat. But then it got worse, and in that 6-0 start, he ended up finishing 8-8. And then there was, of course, that scandal with the walkthrough practice where he was illegally videotaping things, which was kind of the nail in the coffin. There was just, I don't want to get into all of the nitty-gritty details. Here's what I do know. It wasn't the best look for Josh McDaniels, especially coming from one ex-Broncos quarterback. You guys know who I'm talking about. Jay Cutler. Saying this, I went in there with every intention of solving the issue. Being a Bronco, moving forward as a Bronco. We weren't in there for about 20 minutes, and McDaniels did most of the talking. And as far as I'm concerned, he made it clear that he wanted his own guy, which was Matt Castle at the time, because he said he had raised him up from the ground as a quarterback. He said that he wasn't sorry about it. He made it clear that he could still entertain trading me because, as he put it, he'll do whatever he feels is in the best organization and interest of the team. Now, I will say this. As many times as you've heard stories like this coming out about Josh McDaniels, who, believe it or not, has had a lot of success as an offensive coordinator for the New England Patriots, which is where he is again. I think it's his 3rd stint as the Patriots offensive coordinator. Producer Alper, who's a major Patriots fan, has given me the thumbs up, so I am correct on that. He has a reputation around the league of being very blunt and kind of being off-putting to a lot of players, especially as a head coach. He didn't have any success in Denver, and he clearly didn't have any success in Las Vegas. But it's all good, Broncos fans, and as much as this trip down memory lane sounds kind of pointless to you, it did lead us to the one great thing about the current state of the Denver Broncos. The promised one. Mr. Sean Payton. And it's all good because Denver has their guy now, which is awesome because I do believe that Denver, even in 2025, can be a dark horse candidate for a Super Bowl. But as long as Sean Payton is at the helm, this team will always remain relevant. And you can bet on that. If you want daily coverage of Broncos training camp, which actually officially begins tomorrow, the veterans will report next week, but the rookies report tomorrow. We will have videos every single day. So if you haven't joined the family already, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Like the video. As always, my name is Moose. Be cool.